This program contains language some may find offensive.
This is the Jenny McCarthy Show.
You are so fucking fabulous.
Welcome back to the Jenny McCarthy Show. I'm Jenny McCarthy Wahlberg. Joining me is one of my favorite of all time. I've got about maybe 3-4 that I love more than anything in the world. He's one of them. I'm lucky enough that he lives in my hood. But you guys should know him and have his book by now because I talk about it all the time. The Human Magnet Syndrome. It's in bookstores now. He also has a webinar, and it ironically is on a topic that I wanted to talk about this week, which is gaslighting. Gaslighting is everywhere is the name of the webinar, February 25th, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. You guys can register at advancedclinicaltrainers.com. I want to go to this. Hey, Ross, how's it going?
Hey, so nice to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
I love when you're on my show because you're so smart.
No. You know what? It takes two to tango.
Oh, that's so nice. We talk so much. Usually we talk about codependency and sometimes narcissism and how the two go together. But I've been noticing this word gaslighting come on my Facebook feed over and over and over again. I want to talk about it in the context of codependency recovery and narcissistic abuse. But what does gaslighting mean so people can understand?
You know, gaslighting is what I'm discovering. It's a pretty widespread phenomenon. It's a technique that narcissistic manipulators use to undermine the confidence, the self-esteem of another person to the point that they not only doubt themselves and anything that is positive about themselves, but they suggest and implant the idea that there's something wrong with them.
Yes.
And then they systematically manipulate the environment and manipulate the person to actually see that they have this problem, which is actually they never had. And once the person understands and sees its supposed evidence that they have this problem, they fall victim to it, they start acting it out, and then they isolate themselves, and the gaslighter has control of them.
Doesn't that sound horrible?
It is horrible, and it's all over the frickin' place.
It really is. I know. I definitely dated a few. Does gaslighting go only with narcissists?
As I'm actually, it's funny because I'm actually preparing for the webinar and I'm writing this stuff down and I'm creating some new thoughts. There are two forms of gaslighters. There are what I call the sociopathic gaslighter and the pathological narcissist gaslighter. Both of them have narcissistic cores, but one is that the sociopath has a criminal mind that has actually no empathy, has no need for a relationship, just the need to meet their needs. And they're the worst gaslighters because they're the most calculated, the most deceptive and mischievous, whereas a narcissistic gaslighter actually likes and wants the relationship, has empathy towards people that make them feel good. So they're always pathologically narcissistic, but one could be more sociopathic than the other. They're in these two categories.
Let's talk about let's break it down a little bit more.
Sure.
The one that I can remember is making me feel like I was crazy. I would come with a concern, and all of a sudden it was turned around, and I was my point was very valid of a concern and real, but it was turned around where all of a sudden I found myself desperately apologizing for being crazy.
Well, let me first say this: is gaslighters are like, and this might sound like kind of creepy, but gaslighters are like pedophile child molesters. And what I mean by that is they seek a certain personality type. They can feel it. They can like in a crowd, they can pick the one person that's going to be most susceptible, and that's the person who's codependent, who already has, who I call self-love deficit disorder,
right?
Who already has very low levels of self-esteem, who already kind of doubts their own perceptions and has never learned to stand up for themselves. So when you consider that the two individuals, the gaslighter and the codependent, they are able to manipulate the codependent to doubt their own reality, their own perceptions, for the purpose of control. So the gaslighting is about power, control, and isolation. So if you have someone like I used to be and you used to be before we got our help, who already has doubts about themselves, and they start to say, well, that's not right. You're wrong in your thinking. You are thinking this or you feel this. After a while, they wear you down.
Yes.
And they implant this idea that you start to identify with, and next thing you know, you believe it, and then that's the beginning of the end in this process.
Oh my God, it's so true. I have one here of a thing that I found. It says they project. They are a drug user or a cheater, yet they are constantly accusing you of that. This is done so often that you start trying to defend yourself and are distracted from the gaslighter's own behavior. And yeah, I'll let you comment on that. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I was going to say, you're right. That they project. Pathological narcissists project. That they see the nasty, bad things about themselves that they can never admit to, and they see it all the time with others. But the difference between your garden variety pathological narcissist and the gaslighter is that they are actually conscious of what they're doing. So if you tell your garden variety narcissist, I think you're an idiot, he will say, he'll blow up and get mad at you and say, well, you're the idiot. But if you would say to a gaslighter, the gaslighter is able to modify their response and their reaction in order to get the optimal reaction from you. So the narcissists do project and throw everything onto other people, but the gaslighters are actually a lot more methodical and systematic in how they do it. They're very careful. They can actually behave as loving, caring people, altruistic, empathetic people, because that's how they pull their victim into their web. They make them feel that they care for them and they love them, and then they tear them down. And then once they're torn down and they feel isolated because of this disorder that was implanted, they are trapped in what I call the gaslight double bind. The only person that they have in their isolated world is the gaslighter, who keeps them isolated.
Right, and the gaslighter controls them. And I remember flashing back to hearing the words, well, everyone kind of agrees with me. Well, my friends, your friends think so too. You're they're on my side on this, Jenny. And it makes you feel like, oh my God, I have no one to turn to. My friends are agreeing with him, then I must be damaged. I must be wrong. And then I'm alone and again stuck with what I only think I can get him.
And what that person did was they preyed upon your primary defense mechanism is your reality grounding. If a gaslighter can make you doubt your reality, like you have friends who love you, who will believe you. You have friends that you can go to that will protect you. If they can actually if they can implant the idea that they either don't or they won't believe you, or they all will think you're crazy, or, as you said, they all will agree with the gaslighter, then this person who started off insecure is now going to be afraid to reach out to the people because they now believe they are not a resource to them anymore. Right. So it is actually a part of a systematic manipulation technique to isolate you, is to make you doubt your own reality about your friendships, and then make you afraid of those friends and make you feel that they are really more of the enemy than a resource.
And if for some reason I remember my family member or friends trying to trying to help me in any way, and I would go back to the gaslighter, he would convince me that my friends and my family and the media is lying, and that would make me question my reality again.
Exactly, and that's why I use the word brainwashing whenever I talk about gaslighting, because it's this methodical, systematic brainwashing that twists your ability to perceive, understand reality, and makes you doubt anything that's true, makes you insecure. And the part that if they can achieve this, if they can make you paranoid, if they can instill paranoia, and this feeling that the people that you could go to might not protect you, love you, or believe you, then they kind of got you.
That's so true.
It's really messed up, and it's even on a sociological and cultural level. In fact, I was writing the webinar today, and I was realizing, I had this light bulb go off, and I go, holy shit, gaslighting is responsible for these malignant narcissists like Hitler, Stalin, and some political people that we're very familiar with these days.
It is scary. Now, for people that are listening right now that are wondering, oh my God, this sounds somewhat familiar, how can we help them realize that they are in a terrible situation? Give me some words that the gaslighter narcissist might use against someone.
Well, first of all the words you used. And it's anything that makes you believe that the people that you used to trust, that trusted you, that loved you, if this person tries to make you believe that there's nowhere to go and everyone is going to believe him, and he keeps reminding you of what's wrong with you, and try to remember a time when you thought he was wrong. If this is the case, you're not going crazy. I mean, there's so many people that have been gaslit. You have to reach out to a therapist and just mention the term gaslighting, because it's so much of a common term these days, thankfully. That therapist will become a mirror for you to finally look at, so you can actually see who you really are. See, the gaslighter, what they do is they take the picture. It's almost like they take a snapshot of a really sick person, and they tape it on the mirror. And they say, look there, that's you.
What a great analogy. What a great way of saying it. That's true. They put that sick person in your mirror, so they go, that is you. That is what you look like. You are nothing, meaningless.
Absolutely. And I teach my therapists, clinical care consultants, which is in Arlington Heights, Illinois, but I teach them how to help these clients who come to them, these codependents or people with self-love deficit disorder, is that the only power that they have is to learn to love themselves and to trust who they are, because they, from their childhood, have been systematically weakened and turned against themselves. And that's what they need, is someone who can be that mirror or show them the real person they are. And it takes a long time. But the thing I want to tell all of the people listening, it's dangerous. I know that's kind of messed up for me to say.
No, it is.
If you are being gaslit, it's going to be dangerous, because they will either it's physical danger or psychological danger, because they have real power over you. Once you relinquish the power and fall and prey to it, you have given them the goods that they can use against you.
It's so true. And I want to point out something you said to people so they understand. This is one of the insidious things about gaslighting. It's done gradually over time. A lie here, a lie there, a snide comment every so often. And then it starts, ramping up. And then they also throw in positive reinforcement to confuse you. So you're like, oh no, that's not him. That's not him. He's good.
Well, actually, the positive reinforcement is not to confuse you. The positive reinforcement is part of the tactic. They make you believe what's wrong with you, and then they show you that they care and love you and will take care of you.
Right.
So
because you're broken.
Isolate you. You're broken, but you, the gaslighter, will love you and take care of you, and no one else will. And you start to. This is part of what we call the Stockholm syndrome. You start to fall in love with, or you start to identify with the oppressor or the I forget, whatever the
kidnapper,
is.
the whatever.
The kidnapper, yeah. And that is so it's not positive reinforcement to the victim. It's to the process.
It's so scary, because what you said, I want to reiterate again too, is that it is so dangerous. It can really mess up someone's psychological, mental health for the rest of their lives if they don't get out. You can possibly lose your life. I mean, when I got out of this relationship, my therapist, who finally was my only savior of reality, like, it took me a while to believe her versus him. And
you're right.
It took me a while, you know. She would say things to me and say, just go home and see if, you know, this is happening. Just notice. And when you come back, let me know if you notice that I'm right. And then I come back and be like, you're right. I did see that. And over time, I was able to get out. And when I got out, she said, you got out with your life. You really did. And she was she was right, because the next girlfriend wound up committing suicide. So I did get out with my life, and it's that serious.
You know, again, it's like I was just in my chair writing my webinar, and I had this flash of tons of ideas. And one of the things that hit me, and it brings goosebumps, is I was thinking of these famous gaslighters. I thought of Jim Jones, the guy who was his charismatic leader who got everyone to leave to Guyana, and got them to drink a cup of poison to kill themselves. Think about that. To believe someone that you are going that to drink poison will be good for you, you have to be so gaslit that you'll give your life up. So you think of what's that place that I might get in trouble, but Tom Cruise.
Oh, Scientology.
Yeah, I think that's safe.
You can't get in trouble here. Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
as long as you say it.
I have a video. About some political figures on my YouTube channel that I don't. At any rate, I don't have a problem saying how I feel. But groups like Scientology or Jim Jones, for an example. So Scientology people don't kill themselves. Jim Jones, they do. But they're just examples of how normal people who are susceptible can lose their lives, their money, and their families. Yes, you are absolutely right. It's a scourge, and it's deadly in some cases.
And the sad part about it is usually these victims are such vulnerable, they're sweet, good-hearted people. And
codependent.
They prey on them. Yes, they prey on them.
Yes. And, you know, and I write in my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, is codependents who are victims, they play a role in the relationship problem, is that you're sweet, and there's nothing wrong with being sweet or kind. Please don't let anyone pathologize that.
Correct.
But when you're sweet, and kind, and you don't have boundaries, and you let someone take everything and not give anything in return, and then when you try to equalize that, they make you feel bad, and you stay. Then you're codependent. So these sweet, kind codependents fall prey to the gaslighters. But again, going back to the pedophile child molester idea, they cherry pick from all the codependents. Because not all codependents are susceptible to gaslighting. It's a certain type of codependent who is capable of having their reality twisted around and relinquish control over it.
God, it's so fascinating. I mean, I should have just finished college and got my psychology degree, because although I dated them all, so I guess that's how I learned.
Oh. You have it. You don't need a degree to know this stuff. You just might need a degree to impress someone with your credentials and maybe get a job. But you got all this information.
And I'm gonna end it with this, which you agree. It really comes down to being able to survive in this world any which way as a human being, as a spiritual person, is to love yourself. If you truly have self-love, you do have boundaries, like Ross said. You can't get taken advantage of because you love yourself so much. And
self-love deficit disorder is caused by childhood trauma, which means you have to go see a therapist and find out the roots of it to solve it at its core, so you can finally live and be the person you always were meant to be.
It's true. You can't just go to yoga and hug yourself.
Anyone else for that matter.
You've got to go back to the past to heal it and come back to the present moment. Ross Rosenberg, thank you so much. I want to promote your webinar again. Gaslighting is everywhere. The webinar is February 25th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can register at advancedclinicaltrainers.com. The book also he has is The Human Magnet Syndrome, one of my favorites ever on this topic. Ross Rosenberg, one on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure, and have a great day.
You too. We're going to take a quick break and come back with, wow. We're talking about Rob Gronkowski's party bus. Talking to a few people he knows. Be right back.